you have Trump, who started with tariffs on China and stuff like that. China retaliated, said, we're not taking your soybeans. Trump then takes loans from China to give it to the farmers because their crops of soybeans are not sellable. And I think a lot of Trump saying, oh, we should take the Panama Canal or Greenland and stuff like that. He's normalizing taking over sovereign nations. So people would be like, oh yeah, if Putin wants to take over Ukraine, it's just a big deal. It's strategically good for Russia. And New York politics, is its own little beast. But when people try to be all crafty and stuff, I'm like, dude. And I've seen Mumbai politics.
And Emmy, interestingly, I can imagine, I know lots of Indians that know more about American amendments that they would about India.
Especially Mahabharata is all about chalkapat and politics in some ways. Sometimes you imagine these people as these hallowed, amazing, absolutely, oh my God, if this person is the chief minister, if this person is the governor, how amazing must they be? And then you meet them and you realize, they are just regular folks, and some of them are brilliant.
Yeah.
And some of them you're like, I could do this job better than you.
Hello and welcome to Politically Speaking by Lokatantra, where we make politics personal. Today we have our very first guest from abroad, Dr. Minita Sanghvi, an Indian-American politician, author, educator, and activist. She was the first openly gay and first woman of color to be a member of the City Council in Saratoga Springs, New York, where she is also the Commissioner of Finance. She works at Skidmore College as an associate professor in the Management and Business Department. She was also the first Indian-American woman to run for a seat in the state Senate in New York. And amongst other things, she is the person that introduced me to the idea of political marketing. How are you doing?
I am honestly in awe of all the work that you do. It's amazing. And I love the energy that you're bringing to the political process and making it more transparent. So I'm excited to be here.
Thank you so much. And we've had this podcast running for just about 2 months now. And you are actually the first person that we have that is not a Maharashtrian politician. So we're very excited about the fact that we get to talk about finally something new over here. But tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me about your childhood. What was your time in Mumbai like? How long were you here?
So I grew up in Juhu in Bombay. Went to a all-girls school with Lady Visanji Girls Academy. It's a tiny school in Andheri East. My parents thought, we come from a very fortunate background, and my parents thought that this would keep us humble. So it kind of didn't necessarily work that way. We actually got bullied quite a bit because the disparity was significant.
Okay.
And India was a very different time then, the access that people have today, they didn't have back then.
Yeah.
And so, but life moves on. I went to NM College.
Okay.
And then at some point, I was sort of feeling the pressure. My sister got married. There was sort of this idea of I should get married eventually, post-graduation. And I did not want to get married. So I sat for the CET exam, stood 51st in all over Maharashtra.
Wow.
And then got, one of those open seats at NMIS. I finished my MBA there. And then worked here at Leoparnet, the ad agency, for a year.
Know that as a copywriter?
No, in account management.
Okay, very cool.
Yeah. And then moved to the US, largely because, again, like I said, I didn't want to get married.
Yeah.
And you get to a certain age and the parents start talking about.
So you were running away from home, essentially.
Yes, in some ways. I was not running away from home. I was running away from the patriarchal expectation that was that at that point of time. Today, honestly, if a woman does not want to get married, she doesn't have the same pressures that we had back in early 2000.
I would say very honestly, though, it hasn't changed all that much. The expectation still exists, definitely. I feel like women just have a little bit more agency when it comes to
pushing back, but definitely. So, when did you move to the US? 2001. Okay. But do you feel like your time in Bombay has had a significant influence on who you are today? Absolutely. I mean, when I come back to the city, I just sort of realize how much of a city person I am. Out of and now that I've entered politics in New York, yeah, and New York politics, is its own little beast. But when people try to be all like crafty and stuff, I'm like, dude. And I've seen Mumbai politics. This this is child's play here, right? Don't try to feel that I don't see through your moves. So no, I can believe that. Yeah, but do you think that holds true? Do you think politics in India definitely prepares you for politics anywhere else in the world? Right? Absolutely, like there is. Yeah, I mean the even if you look at like Mahabharata Ramayana, yeah, like Ramayana less so, right? But especially Mahabharata is all about chalkapat and politics in some ways. So it's like it's all this, I will go 5 spaces here, then do something that will eventually lead to this thing here. I mean, it's all sort of tied up to give the arts as yet, people. But from when you were here to, let's say, the present day, do you feel like there's been a shift or a change in the patriarchal expectations that you have from a woman who's growing up or at a certain age, but also in general towards somebody, a member of the LGBTQ community that wants to come out? Do you feel like there's something different, or do you think it's more or less just very the same? No, I mean, there's a sea change. There's no doubt about that. I think women have a lot more agency. There's a lot more freedom as to when people get married. Yeah. We came here, actually, my friend was getting married and he's 47, And back in the day, that would have been considered very odd. Divorces are now sort of more commonplace than they used to be. Like I grew up and, again, I come from a pretty moderately conservative family. But like back in the day, if a girl was seen with 2 or 3 boys talking, chatting, laughing, that was nudes. Yeah. And now it's not like that. The people hang out, they stay over. There's no sort of the oppressive sort of mentality. Yeah, like a girl's virtue or stuff like that, or a boy's virtue for that matter. Yeah. I think as parents, we are always going to have expectations to some levels that our children will get married. Like even now, like I think about my son Jamie being like, oh, someday he'll be married. Like that's not so much patriarchy as more just like imagining a bright future for your child. And you want to see, yes, okay. Yeah, that was going to be my next question. Would you want it for your child? But like, of course. Yeah, I mean, because like I'm very happy in my marriage. Okay, I find it gives us a lot of happiness, the friendship, our relationship. And so I want that for him too. And, have, happy family life as well. That makes sense. I can send, but, for the people who don't want that, that's completely viable option. And for people who want to get married but not have children, that's also, today, all of these are viable options. Back in the day, they were less so. Sure, yeah. You have more choices today that are less frowned upon than I would say back in the day. That makes sense. But, I mean, and again, the LGBTQ community, in India and the world has changed significantly since 2001. Yeah, I always say. But I find it a little bit disheartening because I feel like a lot of us fought that fight 25 years ago. Yeah. Thinking that the next generation won't have to fight it. Sure. And there is a little bit of a change, especially in the big cities. Yeah. But not as much as I had hoped is. I think the infrastructure of having a successful relationship here, in India does not exist yet. Sure. So if I was to move back here with my wife and son, and put him in school, I would be worried about him getting bullied for having 2 moms. Right now, I am gearing up for having Jamie's OCI, application put in. Yeah. And I think it might not be as easy as it may be if I was married here. The good thing is, to some extent, Bollywood movies now, at least a few of them, have really started normalizing absolute same-sex relationship.
And I feel like that is one of those things that can actually have a huge impact on the masses. Yeah. So that is a step in the right direction.
From Ek Ladki Ko Dekha to Majama to Absolutely, even there was a really beautiful snippet between Konkana Sen Sharma and Aditi Rao Hydari in, I think it was called Ajib Dastas. It was an anthology of different short. And Konkana Sen Sharma plays a Dalit lesbian woman. Okay. And Aditi Rao Hydari is sort of a questioning, I think would be a best way to describe it. Questioning Brahmin upper caste. Okay. Who was already married.
Okay. That's a lot of intersectionality go with that.
Yeah. And so there was the caste aspect. They are both working in the same place, and Aditi got the job that Kokana was actually better suited for and better educated for. And, but she got it because she was a Brahmin, and I was so on and so forth. But anyways, yeah, but there are lots of
There's even Badhai though, I think.
Yes, absolutely. Another good one.
So I mean I get what you're saying. You made a statement in one of the articles that you've written saying homosexuality is not a Western notion in India, rather homophobia and transphobia are Western ideas brought into India, of course, by the Muslim invaders and then by the Western colonizers, which I think is a profound idea. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
So, I mean, again, if you read our Puranas, Mahabharat, Ramayana, them, yeah, there are lots of stories of women who get married, men, Attaneshwari is this idea, Shikshakti, or Har Hari, the concept of when Ardhanarishwari, Ardhaneshwari is Shiva Shakti, right? Okay, but there's also this idea of when Vishnu becomes Mohini. Correct. Yes,
And then in that chase by Shiva then.
Many times. Yeah. Every single time, apparently, he can't control himself when Shiva becomes Mohini.
Yeah.
And there are temples around these things. There are stories around those things. There's lots of, myth and story. Sure, yeah. And then these are not the only ones, right? Even the most famous one in the Mahabharata was Khandi, who was a transgender person. Yeah. And the cause of Bhishma's death. Yeah. So there's a bunch of books on these now that you can read. But these ideas were very much a part of our life before the Muslim invaders came in.
Sure.
And before sort of patriarchy and the caste system.
And even section 377 is, if I'm not wrong, was a remnant of a British law that
absolutely
said same name.
Yeah, so this was the British law that they tried to sort of impose on.
Emulate.
And I've actually, the movie OMG2, talks a little about that. How the schools used to teach these things back in the day about sex and sexuality and all of that.
Sure.
And how McConnell sort of, with the British government and all of that, removed all those pieces from and they made homosexuality, bestiality, carnal into bourgeois. But we used to also have something called Trakya Prakriti. So it's not just about sexuality, it's also about gender. And this idea of a third gender, that there must male, female, and good gender. And people could exist in those spaces without question, without oppression, sure, without being marginalized, and you could exist perfectly well. Yeah. And so it's not just about sex and sexuality, but it's also gender,
So the idea of it's a bad influence the West is absolute.
No.
Bullshit.
Yeah, I have some better. Yeah. We've had rulers, we'd had, poems.
Yeah, we have a entire Kama Sutra for that matter.
And if you look at Kama Sutra not as just a documentation about sex acts, but as a more deeper analysis of relationships and all of that, you should see a more deeper understanding of sexuality and sexual orientation. Okay, sure. So it's one of the things that I'm working on studying more. To get a better understanding of um, sort of relationships, like structures of relationships.
Got it. So moving to something else now. What made you, we covered your journey up to the point where you reached America. And then what happened? So you were in the accounts department, you said at Rio Burnett.
Yeah.
Then you went over there to college to America.
I did my master's in retailing and consumer science. Okay. And then worked for Walmart and Walgreens for a few years. And then sort of by happenstance, came across, I was interviewing for jobs and one of my friends, they needed a lecturer at University of North Carolina in Greensboro. And, we were friends from a while ago. He had done his PhD at University of Arizona, but I was. And he said, hey, would you like to do this? And my parents thought I was crazy. And they're like, why would you do this? Like, why would you pick up, like, I was interviewing for a consulting position. I was most likely going to get it. Sure, yeah, why would you leave that to do this? And I was like, I think I'm going to enjoy this more. And so I went with my heart and took the job, and I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. I feel like I've enjoyed waking up on Monday mornings and going to work now for the last 15, 20 years.
You watched a film. What a rare blessing to be able to say that. Yeah. Yeah. So where does politics get into all of this? You had this wonderful dog that you loved, you were a professor. What made you suddenly one day be like, no, you know what? I think I need to do more.
Yeah, so I was already doing a lot quite in not exactly in politics, but in activism. So my fight for equal rights started as soon as I came out in 2002. And I started working on, at that point of time, in America. They were going state by state and making the Constitution say that it recognizes only marriage between one man and one woman. They were called propositions. Prop 8 was the most famous one in California. And so they were trying to change those definitions of marriage so that they wouldn't recognize same-sex marriage. So, and so in Arizona, we fought against that and we won. Oh, he's the first red state that, flipped that. And I joined the Human Rights Campaign, which is an organization that works for marriage equality and gay rights in America. Sure. And they do lots of interesting things. So they have, they found that not all doctors and not all hospitals treat gay patients the same. Okay. Because we don't have rights. So if a husband and wife goes to a hospital, they keep the wife informed. She's allowed to go inside, all of those, of course. But if two men or two women were to go, even though they've been married for 25 years or whatever, they wouldn't recognize the marriage. Not all hospitals did. Some did, some didn't. A lot of it varied based on doctors. Even some doctors, because of religious reasons or whatever, would not treat gay patients well. Psychiatrists who wouldn't, give objective, or promote conversion therapy and stuff like that, which is now like disband, So there were a lot of these pieces. So they started keeping lists of organizations that were gay friendly, that gave health insurance to gay people, those kinds of things. So of hospitals and so on and so forth. Yeah. So I think those were really important infrastructure, because I feel that those are the kinds of things you need to create a life, which you don't realize.
The basic foundation, things that you just take for granted.
Right. Yeah. Right. And so they helped in all different ways, to get to equal rights for LGBTQ folks. And so I joined their board of governors. We lobbied with senators and congressmen and women. And I'm not trying to be obnoxious, but I remember the first time I met my representative from Greensboro in North Carolina in the House of Representatives. And he was a nice guy. Okay. But part of me was like, I think I can do your job.
Maybe better than you.
I felt maybe, but So that sort of, was like, sometimes you imagine these people as these hallowed, amazing, absolutely, like, oh my God, if this person's the chief minister, if this person's the governor, how amazing must they be? And then you meet them and you realize, they are just regular folks, and some of them are brilliant. Yeah. And some of them you're like, I could do this job better than you. So that's where it started from. That was the epiphany. Maybe. And I came back and I started getting involved in local politics. I got appointed to the Human Relations Commission in Greensboro. Okay, they had an international sort of committee, for people who are coming in internationally. So I got involved in those kinds of things, and started seeing like what an impact I can make at the local level. Okay, and then I graduated and finished my PhD. Oh, and this is also sort of one of what happened was that Hillary Clinton ran in 2008. So you must have been a baby at that time. But Hillary Clinton ran in 2008 for the first time against Barack Obama, the Democratic primary. Yes. You will not believe the kind of sexism she faced, the kind of BS that people wrote about her. They talked about her breasts, her cleavage, her ankles, her hair, her age, her clothes, her makeup. Like there was a whole article in the Washington Post about the hint of a cleavage of Hillary Clinton according to the debates. In the Washington Post. In the Washington Post, it was a 60 like something word article. Oh my God. On the hint of a cleavage at, while in the Washington Post. And so it was, that level of sort of rampant sexism from places that you would not expect.
Sure, yeah.
It wasn't like it was happening on Fox News. This was happening in the Washington Post. And, Hillary Clinton was considered like, she's so scary. She's unfit to be president. She's too smart. She doesn't have the appeal. And then you had the candidate Sarah Palin, right? I was John McCain's vice presidential ready, and they were like, "Oh no, she's too pretty." So you have what? Somebody who's too smart to be president, who's amazing, and somebody who's too pretty to be president. And I'm like, So essentially, you're just saying that there is nothing a woman can do to be president. Absolutely. Which unfortunately is still true. So that's really, at this point of time, I was doing a graduate certificate course at the Duke Universities in feminist studies. And I was just taking my classes in business at UNC Greensboro. Got it. And I was like, wait, I think there is like a breach here somewhere. And so that's my dissertation. My dissertation was Marketing the Female Politician, an exploration of race, appearance, and gender. Yes. Of gender, appearance, and power. Sorry.
Okay.
Spin off.
So that was the dissertation, and then you did your PhD.
Yeah, that led to, that finished my PhD. You also worked on Clinton's campaign. I volunteered for her campaign, and I then worked up a lot of campaigns, and we got involved in politics and stuff.
For those of members of our audience that are not familiar with it yet, how would you describe your politics? Personally.
So I'm a very moderate progressive, is how I would say.
Okay.
I care about the environment, but I'm also very pro-business.
Okay.
And my wife says that if I was not an immigrant, and if I was not LGBTQ, and if I was not a woman of color, I'd be a Republican.
Okay.
Fair enough. But that's not a surprise. My father is a big fan of Ronald Reagan. He's very pro-business. We come from a business family. So I don't see sort of, the issues. I don't love taxes. I think most people should not. But there are people who do, whatever. Like, there is, okay, sure. There is, you've said a lot of things that I did not expect a Democrat to say. So I'm
I'm very amused by that right now. But so you're definitely a moderate. I consider myself a moderate. So yeah.
I feel that, health insurance is an issue that needs to be addressed in America. Immigration is an issue that needs to be addressed in America. In the health system in general.
Would it be correct to say that you're socially liberal and fiscally conservative?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, these are them. What they call the, I think, blue dog Democrats. But, there are different ways of looking at this. So there are the Republican perspective on this is cut spending. That's sort of the bottom line on everything.
Yeah.
Lower taxes, cut spending.
So we actually did an exercise with UPA in, and I spent the last few weeks talking to some friends of mine that are, a few of them are NRIs, so they live in Bombay, but they're actually American citizens, and some other Indian citizens that are just very political and very curious about American politics. And the general criticism across the board for Democrats is the fact that they believe in spending on all of these things that are going to deplete the reserves. And then their way of fixing that is to tax highly.
Yeah.
And that you're absolutely right about the fact that that does seem to be the general point of contention. Which, would you say that this is a fair characterization of?
I think both parties do it.
Okay.
I think that, you have Trump who started with tariffs on China and stuff like that. China retaliated, said, we're not taking your soybeans. Trump then takes loans from China to give it to the farmers because their crops of soybeans are not settled.
Talking about red tape, though, somebody that is, outside of India and has been for quite some time, you have some distance when it comes to viewing the country's growth story, even the political climate for that matter. What is your take on the current political disposition over here? What are your feelings about it?
I love seeing India progress, but I feel frustrated with
A lack of progress on certain issues.
And it's really interesting, right? Because I feel like in many ways, Congress is sort of like the Democrats of the U.S. Like I find BJP is more sort of the Republican Party-ish. Sure, yeah. And I was listening to Anish, talk about it, and he was talking about that within Congress, people will fight on ideology and ideas. And the Democrats have that same thing, we are constantly fighting amongst ourselves. Yeah. But with the BJP, it's sort of like the diktat, right? This is what it is. This is what Peter Samarkand means. Yeah. And this is the party line, and that's that. And that's sort of the Republican sort of
Was it also consolidated?
Yeah.
They have more unity as a party.
Yeah.
Which also makes it easier for them to get things done.
They're better organized, therefore can someone better. Yeah. And Democrats often will fight amongst themselves and fill themselves internally.
See it happen in live time in India right now.
Right, exactly. And so that's one of the key pieces, that's I feel very similar. Okay. We have a saying, Democrats want to fall in love. Yeah, this Republicans fall in wine.
Which is a wonderful saying, actually. Yeah.
And so it's very similar, I feel. Yeah. But what I found over the past 25 years now is that the white and black relationships that we have in USA, in some ways are very similar to the Hindu-Muslim relationships here. In many ways, they are the sort of same part of the, like the majority and minority. Sure. Obviously, here it's even more complicated because we are actually all the same color.
I want you to explain and elaborate on that for me.
Yeah. So a lot of the opportunities, that white people got, black people did not.
Yeah.
And it was a very it was a decision taken by white people in power to keep black people not having the same opportunities. So redlining was a way for white people to ensure that black neighborhoods were different from white neighborhoods. They were not allowed in their white neighborhoods. We see that a lot here within Hinduist Yadavas and and they're not allowed to have apartments even. Share a lot of people there are also builders or managers who will say, we'll just, if we see a Muslim name, we won't give them the environment only and all that stuff. So they're not given the opportunities to integrate in the community.
Yeah.
If you do the experiment where you send Muhammad Iqbal CV versus Mahesh Shankar's CV,
It was the
you will see the number of calls that the CVs get, even though the qualifications are the same.
sure.
So, education, in terms of, in USA, the redlining is even worse, because what they would do is they would not plant trees in those areas. So those areas would be hotter. They would have more climate issues. If there was what do you say, the dumps, where you're throwing the dump of the city. They would put that in those areas, because again, they don't want it in the white areas.
Okay.
So a lot of those sort of decisions were made in those areas. So you're constantly, creating a situation when the community gets even more oppressed, even more marginalized, has worse health outcomes. Even today, Black maternal mortality is way higher than anywhere, so it's a lot of these kinds of things. Yeah. But here, even, if you don't give people education, if you don't give them housing, then they end up starting their own businesses, which a lot of Black people do. Yes. And then there is also sort of this idea of they are against us, or they are this way only. There is a sort of this, they have a predisposition to violence. So all that rhetoric is very similar both ways. There is idea of gangs also exist
In them rhetoric as well to some extent.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And a lot of the violence that happens against Muslims, for example, or against Black people, is perpetrated by, white people. Often, we just had a case in USA where this guy was handcuffed, was beaten, and, sort of beaten so hard, and sort of, he was beaten his head and his groins, all these people. He was handcuffed. He was absolutely of no, danger to anyone, right? And then he sort of passed out. They brought him back. Then they beat him again. They resuscitated him and then beat him again. Those kinds of things. Till he died. But it's those kinds of situations where it's that majority minority oppression that you see, and in many cases, in at least what you read in the news here, is sometimes the allegations are not even true, but are many times there's a rumor or this hint or this absolutely right, that this person had
Exactly. Was doing this, was going to do something.
How can you kill someone on what they were going to do?
Yeah.
So it's really
Wait, do you think that treatment of the minorities in America is limited to African Americans? Or would you say it also includes, let's say, Latinas or Indian Americans? There was that case in the middle where this Indian female student was
like this, that was really terrible. And the second person in that case just got bail. No, I think they got charged. I mean, not charged. We got sentenced, I think. I'm not 100% sure, but I just read recently that the other person was also Leobone's corpse. Yeah. I think there's definitely sort of a little bit more of an Asian model minority feeling. Sure, because they see a lot more Asians, doctors, lawyers, CPAs, so there's definitely that feeling of these are the good minorities. Sure. There's also the fact that, Hindus are actually the number one earning religion in USA.
Okay.
Indians are the number one amongst Asians. Asians are number one. So it's Asians, whites, Hispanic, and Black. That's how it works in terms of race and income.
Sure.
So we are not only doing really well, but even within the Asian population, Indians and Hindus do really well.
But surely that must also create some animosity, right? On the grounds that we're out there taking the better jobs.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's definitely that. Uh, but a lot of, they see a lot of CEOs as Asian age, stuff like that. Also, there's, but the animosity is largely sort of left for the Hispanic and the Black population.
What would you say the current status of Indian American relations were on a national level?
Indian Americans,
Indian American relations as two countries between Trump and, let's say, Modi.
I mean, Trump and Modi love each other, right? They're sort of very much, I think Modi would.
They regulate you all these all areas on the face of it, but do you think that genuinely sort of trickles down into the way that the countries treat each other?
I sure hope so, because, we are two very strong democracies that dare to support each other. So especially this, very dark turn that the world is taking, the globe is taking towards more right-wing, more sort of nationalistic, more.
Sure, but we're a huge part of.
We are, but we are also a democracy. Yeah. And, our proximity to China plays a big role in all of these pieces. Of course, I just read in the newspaper that China passed $1 trillion in global surplus. $1 trillion. Yeah. I mean, it's a dragon that's awoken. And yes, a lot of what Russia is able to do is because China supports it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and China is supporting it because if Russia can take over Ukraine and nobody's going to do anything about it, then China can take over parts of Asia and nobody's going to do it, but it's going to drive that, right? And I think a lot of like Trump saying, oh, we should take the Panama Canal or Green and stuff like that is really, talking by normalizers. Absolutely. He's normalizing taking over sovereign nations. So people would be like, oh yeah, if Putin wants to take over Ukraine, it's just a big deal. Like it's strategically good for Russia. Well, guess what? It's a sovereign nation. And it's a democratic sovereign nation. And America,
Wait, where do you stop that? I mean, if we're just taking more and absorbing countries,
well, I mean,
on it, right?
the problem is with a Trump election. Essentially, now NATO has weakened, right?
Yeah.
And if it's not like if he takes over Ukraine, he's going to stop.
Something else we spoke about was the number of women that you interviewed. And a lot of the women that you interviewed was also for your book.
Yeah.
Which I want to talk about a little bit. Gender and political marketing in the US in the 2016 presidential election, an analysis of why she lost, which was published by Valerie Macmillan in 2018. For the uninitiated, could you give us a brief synopsis of the book, what you cover in it?
Sure. So I discuss, you know, from the 1990s to present day, well, so 2018, the issues that women face when running for office.
Okay.
So 1992 was considered the year of women, where a lot of women ran. So this was right after the Anita Hill hearings.
Okay.
So there's a Supreme Court justice named Clarence Thomas. He was a black man who was getting nominated for the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
And saying that he had sexually harassed them.
Okay.
Anita Hill being one of the key people that came forward. There were others as well that they did not include. Interestingly, Joe Biden was the one who was presiding those hearings.
Okay.
And his nomination went through. But a lot of people, because of Anita Hill's accounts, could identify that they could tell that what she was saying was true. It's almost like a very similar thing that happened with Brett Kavanaugh and his hearing. I don't know if you followed that.
Yeah.
But a woman came forward saying he sexually assaulted me when I was younger. And there were other women as well that the FBI didn't bother to answer. So it was almost like a repeat.
Sure, yeah.
And so a lot of women went to that election, that cycle, sort of hoping to do something. Yeah. And a lot of women ran for office during that cycle. So it was almost like in 2018, after Trump got elected, a whole bunch of more women ran for office and voted and stuff like that. I gave money in those elections. Yep. That was a repeat of 1992.
Got it.
So it was sort of very similar circumstances. Women felt that they had been, it was sort of like they saw publicly what was happening to this one woman. They could identify with that and said, I'm going to do something. Sure. And so 1992 onwards, a lot more women ran, and Senate went from, I think, 2 women to 6 women out of 100.
Okay.
And that was considered progress.
Yeah. Baby steps.
Yeah. And so, but, I talk about how women didn't have access to bathrooms. They didn't have access to, the basic infrastructure needs. They did not, they were constantly sort of commented on. They were harassed by their own constituents as well as their own colleagues. Sexually harassed, sexually assaulted in some cases. And there are so many stories now I've heard of these men who are in power, who are in Congress, who have assaulted women and sort of think that they can do that and get away with it. Yeah, and there's an actual a fund that pays off all these women that Congress funds. It's true. What do you mean? Like legitimately, they're complaints that come forward and then they're resolved and paid off. And all of Congress is hand in glove when it comes to that. Well, many of them are. I know Matt Gaetz was this big thing, but actually Marjorie Taylor Greene was the one, I think, who said so. She's like, listen, you want to, sort of make public his report, feel free to, but make public all of your reports as well. Because they all have these files, and then not everybody, right? Yeah, not everybody, but many theorists. Yeah, there's a professor in my college. She was in the first batch of women MBAs that were allowed at Harvard. Okay, first batch of women MBAs. She, graduated from, I think, Smith or one of these colleges that was really well known. And she interned for one of the congressmen, and he raped her. And she didn't say anything for years, decades. And that she was later told that he had a type, and she was not surprised that she was the one who got hired by him and all of that. I mean, so you hear she ever come out with the story? She told me about it. This was around the time that I had joined, so 2016-ish, in that Trump era. But she's finally said something about it. But this is not unusual. In my research, I found that a lot of women in power, like these are the most powerful women. But look at the way Nancy Pelosi was treated on January 6th when those people, absolutely went into the Capitol building, right? They sort of desecrated her desk. Yeah. They were, called her names. Yeah. There was a lot of, animosity, a lot of hatred, a lot of betrayal, and so if they hate women in power, that's essentially, a key piece of this. And so I talk about the different ways gender plays a role. Could you give us an example when it comes to the campaign, let's say Trump versus Hillary, of where gender and marketing are sort of made a pronounced impact? I know one of the things that he spoke about in the book was, I think, his campaign logo. Trump's campaign logo was actually, the first logo actually was a T that went into the P. So it was like a T that went to the P. And there was a thought of me on this line immediately, being like, Trump is telling us exactly what he's going to do hence, and what he ended up doing to Pence. But it's not just the logos. It's I'll give you an example. For Hillary Clinton to get on stage, right? She needs to wake up an hour earlier to get ready, because if there's even the slightest bit of an issue, that becomes the news. Yeah. The amount of coverage that she gets on anything that happens to her family, is able. So a father of a young child is never asked who's taking care of the child. Yeah. But a mother of a young child is always asked, so who's taking care of the babies? Right? And it's these things where there's a lot of unconscious bias that women face that men don't.
So what percentage do you think of, again, this is a very generalized question, what percentage do you think her gender played in her eventual loss? Would you say that it was significant? Would you say it was a small part?
No, it was significant by sure. This whole idea, right, of crooked Hillary or lying Hillary and stuff like that, right? Those little thick names that Trump came up with. A lot of that stuck because there is this propensity first to believe that women are liars and manipulative fishes. Sure. Okay. And it stems all the way from the Bible. It stems from Eve. And, Eve and the apple and, the whole snake and all of that. Yeah. Stems from like how women are these manipulative bitches, right? Even in like we were talking about the Mahabharata. Yeah. Right. That they blame Draupadi for it. Like, she didn't have any of the major, decision-making. This is there. Those decisions were made by two men. Yes. And yet she's often blamed. So there's this notion of like women, are wily, they're manipulative, they are sort of, crooked, liar, whatever. So these things stuck because of her gender. So, and the fact that, we don't like women in power. Okay. Especially in executive power. So we are fine with Senate. Because there she's one amongst 100 making a decision for us. But what she is number one. But when she's the one, it's men feel emasculated. Yeah. They feel, and it's men and women both. So what women feel is that if she is doing this, if she's transgressing gender norms, what does that say about me? I agreed to stay men have created this boundary for women. Yeah. Right? And the women who stay in it are angry with somebody else's leaving it because they want. Well, how dare you leave it when I have adhered to this and when I'm still stuck here? Right. So when it almost comes from a place of envy. Envy, yeah, anger, So often women will be even harder on women than other people. Yeah.
Which makes sense. Because I expected more women when it came to Harris and when it came to Printed to vote for them. And I was very surprised to know that was not the case.
There are 10 million more registered women voters in the US compared to men. Yeah. If women voted, the women would win every single election. Yeah. Right? If women voted for the women candidate. Yeah. But in both cases, in Hillary as well as in Kamala Harris, what happened was Black women voted for Hillary Clinton. Yeah. Hispanic women voted for Hillary Clinton. Asian women voted for Clinton. White women voted for Trump. Same exact thing happened with Harris. Yeah. The women of color vote for the woman. The white women vote for the man.
Which makes very good sense to me.
Yeah. And, it's definitely worth exploring. Yeah, for sure. What is what, But for a lot of these white women, especially the low information voters, the uneducated white women, the sort of rural white women, I think it's a lot of that. I am in this boundary. You are leaving this boundary. How dare you leave this boundary?
But which is the reason why white women voted for Trump was completely gendered. There's
there's a lot of things like his rhetoric on, immigrants may have, been popular. His rhetoric. It was also this whole, they were playing this whole trans fear, transphobia. Yeah, a lot of the election cycle was them running these ads where Kamala Harris talks about how she would be okay with gender reaffirming surgery in the military. Yeah. And so it's sort of like, for a lot of people, it's the emasculation of the male identity.
Got it.
Right. Like,
what percentage of Harris's loss would you attribute to the campaign's inability to say anything about Israel-Palestine conflict?
A significant portion, especially amongst young people. Yeah. So when we were going door to door, I would hear a lot of, especially Muslim voters who would be like, she needs to say something or else I'm not voting. My dear Emily's going to stay at home. And a lot of the Democrat sort of talking points were, yes, but Trump is not better. But did they not realize, surely,
they must have known that this would be a huge part of the reason why people wouldn't vote for that. It was out there. It was, people were publicly criticizing her for not taking a stand on the issue.
I think, the problem in both cases with Hillary Clinton as well as with Kamala Harris is that there was a lot of this not Trump kind of rhetoric. You should vote for me because I'm not Trump. Sure, yeah. And I think it's more important, especially for women candidates, to stand for something even bigger than price today. Yeah. So, if she said free college, that might have been like the sure thing. And I did meant something that she said, but it had to be something bigger. And she did try. The problem with Kamala Harris was that she was very relatively, unknown. Yeah, she was pretty unknown. She had a very limited time gap. And for her, it was the double-edged sword, right, of race as well as gender. What do you think made, what do you think was the reason Trump won this time? God, I think a lot of people were really frustrated with the inflation. Okay. So inflation was really, really high. And wages went up, but wages went up a much more smaller amount. Sure. So somewhere between let's say 4% to 16%. And inflation went up by almost 35% in some places. Yeah. And so the things that you saw every day, like our grocery bill. Earlier, Megan and I would go to the grocery store every week. Our bill would be $100. Okay. Since the last 2-3 years, it's been like $250 to $300. Okay, that's quite a rise. Right. Yeah. So the break that we used to buy for like $4 or $5, now $8. Right? Any construction, we wanted to redo our kitchen. We can't even imagine redoing it because at that point they had said about $35,000-$40,000. Now, if you were to redo it, it would come close to $80,000-$90,000. So, it's just everything has doubled almost and skyrocketed. Okay. So, it's become really hard for people to live. And they blamed all of this on Biden. Yeah. Even though, really, he has really great policies that it's pushing a lot of money down the pipeline because of the infrastructure bill that he has passed. Yeah. Which Trump had been promising for years. Yeah. But that bill is putting in a lot of money into American infrastructure, creating a lot of jobs and creating a lot of, sort of local boosts to economy. So, and, but it's not immediate. Yeah. Because infrastructure is never immediate. Yeah, it takes years in planning, in putting in motion, of course. And so, unfortunately, what people could see was just that their lives were not better. Yeah. And then there was all this transphobia, this immigrant, xenophobia and stuff like that. And they didn't give a rat's ass about the rights of women, LGBTQ issues, and all of that, and none of that. And the Democrats, I think, got complacent. They saw that abortion was a winning issue. Yeah. And it got women out to vote. And it did in many cases. Yeah. But not enough where, and it's shocking, right? You no longer have the right to abortion in your state. Yeah. And yet you will vote for Trump, knowing that this is exactly what legit what. So, yeah, it's really shocking. A lot of now was something that was the fact that abortion is even still just a debate is, and that's where India is miles ahead of America. Oh, absolutely, yeah, without question. Yeah, I don't know how that is. Even the fact that because it's not. Just say India is less patriarchal would be wrong, and yet we've had a female prime minister. Absolutely, and it's shocking to me. I mean, but keep in mind also, your female prime minister was the daughter of a very prominent male prime minister. And I don't think that necessarily all, women would have been able to get to that stereotype. I mean, it's possible though. Sonia Gandhi came pretty close to becoming a prime minister at one point of time. Yeah. Then somebody, read the constitution and said, well, actually. Yes. On that note, we're moving on to other fun rapid fire part of, I feel like I'm on coffee with Kaha. Yes, that's exactly what we're supposed to be feeling like. And I'm going to give you the names of some politicians. And I want you to tell me what they could do as an alternative profession. Okay. And we're starting with Sonia Gandhi. Wasn't she a model? Like, I think she was. I think could have been. Sure. Yeah. Fair enough. Putin. Putin should be a patient in a psychiatric subject.
Okay, then. We're not holding back. Narendra Modi.
Oh, boy. I want to come to India.
He wants to come to India.
No, honestly, I think he's fantastic at PR.
He is very good at PR.
I feel like, he would be a
good PR consultant.
Yeah.
Sure, okay. Vivek Ramaswamy.
He should run a propaganda machine for a psychopath. Isn't that what he's doing?
Justin Trudeau.
Yeah, he should definitely be an actor. I think he's got the good looks.
He does.
He doesn't have a lot of school to go jobs though. I'm definitely not going to get elected to anything after this.
Nancy Pelosi.
Talk about balls of steel. She should be the president of the United States.
Really?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you want to understand Machiavellian politics, she's the person. Like, she's incredible at it. I mean, for her to have forced Biden out of the race, that was her. But to smack Trump around and eat a sandwich in the first term when she was the Speaker of the House. I mean, no, she was fantastic.
She was fine.
Even the public displays, right, where she tore up the speech after the entire. Oh my God,
that was good television. I would say,
but it sticks real balls. Like, oh yeah, you have to go beyond like the norms of like shame and what is considered sort of normal behavior. Be all to be like, oh, I'm gonna do this on national TV.
Yes, with the whole world watching. Joe Biden.
Joe Biden should be in an assisted living facility.
Elon Musk.
Elon Musk, he should be on Mars. I think he's much better suited than for any other planet. But this one, that's what he wants, right? He wants to go to Mars. We're on board. We shouldn't care. Send him off on his SpaceX.
Okay, the next round is I'm going to give you a movie name, and you tell me a politician that it reminds you of. Godfather. This can be Indian, American, anybody.
Amit Shah.
We got in that answer once before already, but very nice. The Iron Lady.
Nancy Pelosi.
Catch Me If You Can.
Donald Trump.
James Bond.
James Bond. Politician.
You think that doesn't have the charm for it?
No.
Serenka. A Beautiful Mind.
I don't think of anybody. Yeah, that's sort of.
No. The Wolf of Wall Street.
The Wolf of Wall Street. Bill Clinton.
And Fruitus.
Joe Biden.
I'll take it. That was a good answer. It was honest.
I feel like, and you're going to see the disparity, but I feel Angela Merkel would make a really good spy.
Sure, you mean like an M-esque character almost.
But it's only because we have our gender norms that you're seeing her as an M and not as a James Bond.
Sure, yeah, maybe. Fair enough.
I could totally see a female James Bond. I just don't know. I tend to be suave and debonair and sexy and all of that. But if you remove those pieces of it, Angela Merkel would be fantastic.
Sure, okay. I love that you eventually gave me an answer for that. Okay, and this is this or that. Tea or coffee?
Neither. Milk.
That was the most unusual answer we have gotten.
Well, when we were little, they said drink milk. I just continue.
Okay, milk or beer?
Milk.
Morning person or night owl?
Morning.
Books or movies?
Books.
Fiction or non-fiction?
Oh, fiction.
Harris or Clinton?
Clinton.
Really, why?
Clinton has a lot to do with my own personal journey into politics.
Sure.
And so I feel more deeply about.
Skidmore, University of North Carolina.
University of North Carolina.
ADR US.
Both.
Fair enough. Okay, and now for our last round, I'm going to give you a ballot box. And if you can please pick out a chit and give it to me.
Sure.
Thank you. And in this round, so it says Electoral College. And what I would like you to do is to first give our audience just a brief snippet of what it means, and then share whatever your opinion is on it.
Sure. So, we have, like in India, we have the Lok Sabha, the Rajya Sabha, and stuff like that. And we have elections for it.
Yeah.
In the US, we have a presidential election every 4 years.
Yeah.
And every state in the country votes for it at one time. But you're not directly voting for the president. That would be the popular vote.
Yeah.
So each person is voting, let's say in California,
Sure.
For the president.
Yeah.
Instead, what we have is that the number of seats California has in its Lok Sabha, which is the House of Representatives, correct? Those get together. So you have
you have a number of people representing the state, basically.
The number of people representing the state, that becomes the electoral college votes. And then we have something called a winner take all. In most states, not all states. Nebraska is different, Maine is different.
Okay.
So in Nebraska and Maine, the electoral votes are split based on how the places vote.
Okay.
But in most other states, if let's say 51% of the state voted for Trump and 49% voted for Avarrsekar, they take the whole state. And so those people, what we are actually doing on that day is voting for the electors.
Got it.
So they are just random people, regular people
random people that are picked to do this.
Right. So there is a process to that as well. But they are regular people that get together on one specific day.
Sure.
And cast the vote based on how their state voted for.
Okay.
So it's not like they have as much agency, though there have been in the last few years attempts to try to. And then on January 6th, those votes are counted by Congress and certified. So if you see the January 6th insurrection that happened in 2020, was when both parts of Congress, the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha, or the House of Representatives and the Senate, got together, including the Vice President and the Speaker of the House, and they have to certify the election. So everybody is there together certifying it. That's when those guys came and attacked and tried to disrupt it because they wanted Donald Trump.
So just to clarify, these electors have to vote on the basis of how their state has already voted. It's not for them to go and try and turn things around.
That is what the founding fathers envisioned it to be.
Okay, sure.
There had been attempts now to corrupt that system.
What are your thoughts on the system? Using this as...
I think there are lots of people who are hoping to just move to popular vote. Yes, so one vote, one.
But why would that not make more sense?
Isn't it? Because then nobody would go to Idaho, Wyoming, these states that don't matter, right? You would only, right now, where the people are spending their money is where they're going, the presidential candidate, are the swing states.
Correct.
Right? You have the red states and the blue states that are, essentially go to blue, what you say, red and blue.
Yeah.
And the swing states are really what's causing the thing. If you move to popular vote, California and New York suddenly will become the states that matter.
Because of population.
Because of population.
Sure.
Texas, Florida.
Yeah.
And so we may actually have a reasonable swing states because Texas is red, Florida is red, Ohio is red. So the population will decide how people live.
But for this to change, it would have to be like a constitutional amendment.
Right. Yeah, we would have to change it, because right now we have the electoral system. Okay, got it. Very interesting.
Thank you. So much for having your time and for sharing your wisdom with us. I had a lot of fun and learned a lot today. So thank you.